I spent my entire 20s funding my brother's education. At his graduation dinner, I realized I was never a daughter to my parents, just an ATM. I am the eldest daughter in a low-income family. When I was 18, I got accepted into my dream university. A week later, my dad had a severe accident that left him unable to work. My parents sat me down crying, saying they would lose the house if I left. So I gave up my scholarship. I stayed home, started working 2 full-time jobs, and became the primary breadwinner. For the next 10 years, I paid the mortgage, I paid the utility bills, and most heavily, I paid for my younger brother, Leo. My parents always told me Leo was the smart one, the one who would break our family's cycle of poverty. They begged me to make sure he didn't have to struggle like I did. I believed them. I bought his laptops, paid his rent, and covered his out-of-state university tuition so he wouldn't graduate with debt. I wore thrifted clothes with holes in them, drove a car with a broken heater, and never went on a single vacation. I told myself it was worth it because I was taking care of my family. Last week was Leo's graduation. He graduated with honors in engineering. I was so incredibly proud. I took out a small personal loan just to afford a plane ticket to see him walk the stage, and I paid for a lavish celebration dinner for our family at a high-end restaurant he chose. At the dinner, my dad stood up to give a toast. He cried. He talked about how hard he and my mom had prayed for this day, how Leo had pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and how Leo's sheer willpower and independent hustle had gotten him to the top of his class. Leo smiled, raised his glass, and thanked our parents for their endless emotional and financial support. I sat there waiting for my name. I waited for a single acknowledgement of the 10 years of my life I had sacrificed, the 80-hour work weeks, the money I wired them every single Friday, but my name was never spoken. I wasn't in the toast, I wasn't in the photos, I was just the person sitting at the quiet end of the table. Later that night, outside the restaurant, my car wouldn't start. It finally broke down completely. I was panicking. I pulled Leo aside and quietly asked if he could spot me $300 for a tow truck and a repair just until my next paycheck. He sighed, looked at his phone, and said, "You know, I'm saving up for a down payment on my new apartment. You really need to learn how to manage your money better. Yep, it's not my job to bail you out." He patted my shoulder and got into an Uber with his friends. There was no grand argument. I didn't yell and I didn't demand my money back. Why, something inside me just quietly broke. I realized in that moment that they didn't see my sacrifices as acts of love. They saw them as their rightful entitlement. I was never a daughter or a sister. I was just a resource they had finally drained dry. I paid $300 on my credit card for the tow truck. I went back to my cheap hotel room, packed my bags, and changed my phone number. I didn't leave a dramatic letter. I just disappeared from their lives. It's been 2 months now. I'm living in a tiny studio apartment, eating ramen and saving money for myself for the first time in 10 years. I still cry myself to sleep most nights, grieving the family I thought I had, but the silence in my new apartment is finally starting to feel like peace.
My future mother-in-law secretly altered my custom $6,000 wedding dress to fit her daughter, so I let the police be my +1 to the reception. I recently married my husband, Tom. His mother, Karen, has always heavily favored his younger sister, Mia. Mia was also engaged, but constantly complained about her tight wedding budget. My parents generously gifted me a stunning, custom-made $6,000 designer wedding gown. I kept it safely in a garment bag in the guest room of the house Tom and I had just bought. Karen had a spare key to our house for emergencies. A week before my wedding, I went to try on the dress for a final vibe check. It wouldn't zip. In fact, it was suddenly 2 sizes too small, and the hem was chopped off by at least 5 inches. I am 5 feet 9 inches. Mia is 5 feet 4 inches. Inside the lining, I found a dry cleaning receipt with Karen's phone number on it. Karen had used her emergency key to secretly take my dress to a cheap tailor. She had it permanently altered to fit Mia's exact measurements. Her plan was obvious: force me to buy a cheap off-the-rack dress at the last minute because my custom one didn't fit, so Mia could graciously inherit the designer gown for her own wedding next month. I was devastated, but I didn't confront her. I quietly went to a boutique, bought a beautiful replacement dress with my emergency savings, and kept it in my trunk. Then I made a phone call. On the morning of the wedding, I handed the zipped garment bag to Karen and sweetly asked her to hang it in the bridal suite while I got my hair done. When it was time to get dressed, I put on my new boutique dress. Karen walked in, dropped her purse, and stammered, "Wait, what is that? Where is your custom gown?" I smiled and said, "Oh, the $6,000 one. It was mysteriously altered and ruined. But don't worry, I filed a police report for felony property destruction yesterday. The police reviewed our neighborhood doorbell cameras, saw exactly who took the dress out of the house, and are handling it." Karen instantly started hyperventilating and had to sit down. I walked down the aisle looking flawless and married the man of my dreams. But the most satisfying part of the day happened during the cocktail hour. 2 uniformed police officers quietly walked into the venue and asked Karen to step outside. Through the massive glass windows of the reception hall, Tom's entire extended family watched as Karen broke down crying and confessed to the officers. Tom was so disgusted that he immediately kicked Mia and Karen out of the venue. Karen is currently working weekends at a grocery store to pay my parents back the $6,000 in court-ordered restitution, and Mia had to get married in a $50 dress from Amazon because her mom drained her wedding fund to pay for a lawyer.
My arrogant boyfriend's mother called me a broke gold digger and called building security to have me illegally evicted from our luxury apartment, so I let the head of security walk in and publicly reveal that I actually own the entire multi-million-dollar building. I had been dating my boyfriend Greg for 2 years, and his family constantly bragged about their imaginary wealth. His mother, Martha, absolutely hated me because I wore simple thrift store clothes and worked as a humble middle school teacher. She constantly told everyone I was a greedy leech, draining her precious son's bank account. What Martha didn't know was that I made a massive fortune developing a financial app in my early 20s, and I actually own the entire luxury high-rise apartment building we lived in. I let Greg live in my beautiful penthouse completely rent-free, but told him I just got a massive discount through a friend to protect my privacy. Last week, Martha and Greg's sister came for a surprise weekend visit. Martha immediately started insulting my furniture and told me I needed to pack my cheap bags and leave immediately because Greg was breaking up with me to date a wealthy corporate lawyer's daughter. Greg didn't even defend me. He just looked at the floor and nodded, saying he deserved someone in his own elite tax bracket. Martha smugly pulled out her phone and called the building's front desk demanding they send security up to physically remove a crazy squatter from her son's apartment. I didn't scream or cry. I just sat on my leather couch and casually sipped my morning coffee. 3 minutes later, the head of building security and the property manager knocked on the massive double doors. Martha smiled maliciously and pointed directly at me, yelling, "Get this broke trash out of my son's house right now." The property manager looked at Martha completely confused, then looked directly at me and said, "Is everything okay here, boss?" Martha's smug smile completely froze on her face. She asked why they called me boss. I stood up and calmly explained that my private holding company owns the entire 50-unit building, and her fake rich son has been living completely rent-free on my dime for 2 solid years. Greg went absolutely pale and started violently stuttering, trying to apologize and say it was all a big misunderstanding, but I just raised my hand and stopped him. I looked at the massive security guards and told them Greg's guest privileges were officially and permanently revoked, and he had exactly 15 minutes to pack his cheap suits before they were all arrested for federal trespassing. Martha started aggressively crying and screaming that I was an evil monster while the security guards physically escorted them out the front door and forced them into the cramped service elevator. I threw Greg's expensive golf clubs directly into the alley dumpster, and I currently have the entire penthouse completely to myself while he moved back into his mother's basement. My gold-digging stepmom tried to illegally kick me out of my childhood home the exact day after my father passed away so she could move her lazy son in, but she had absolutely no idea that my biological mother had secretly left the entire multi-million-dollar property completely in my name. I'm 24 years old, and I still lived at home to help take care of my sick father. 5 years ago, he married a terrifying woman named Brenda, who had a deeply spoiled 19-year-old son named Tyler. Brenda always hated me because I reminded my dad of his first wife, and she treated the house like it was her own personal luxury hotel. When my father unexpectedly passed away last month, I was completely devastated, but Brenda didn't even shed a single tear. The exact morning after his funeral, I came home from picking up groceries and found all of my belongings packed into cheap trash bags sitting on the front porch. Brenda was standing in the doorway holding a cup of coffee with a smug smile on her face. She handed me a completely fake printed eviction notice and told me I had exactly 2 hours to get off her property because Tyler was taking over the master bedroom and they didn't want my depressing energy ruining their new house. No, I didn't scream or throw a tantrum. I just looked at the trash bags, smiled at her, and walked back to my car. What Brenda completely failed to understand was that my father never actually owned the house. The property had been fully paid off and placed into an ironclad trust fund by my late biological mother's wealthy parents. The exact moment I turned 18, the legal deed transferred 100% into my name. My father was legally just my tenant, and Brenda was absolutely nothing. I drove straight to my lawyer's office and then went directly to the local police precinct with the official property deeds. 2 police officers followed me back to the house. When I unlocked the front door, Tyler was in the middle of dragging his expensive gaming setup into my master bedroom. Brenda started screaming at the cops to arrest me for trespassing, but the lead officer just shook his head and handed her my official immediate eviction order. I stood there casually dangling the master keys while the color completely drained from Brenda's face. The police informed her that because she was never on the deed and had attempted an illegal lockout, she had exactly 30 minutes to pack whatever she could fit into her car before being permanently escorted off my private property. Tyler started crying as the cops made him drag his heavy gaming monitors back down the stairs and out the front door. Brenda desperately tried to beg for forgiveness, claiming she was just grieving and confused, but I just slammed the heavy oak door right in her face. I sold her expensive abandoned furniture online to pay for a deep cleaning service, and she is now living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment trying to pay Tyler's massive credit card debts.